Okay, so you want to turn an interesting but elegant ornament that's within the um, skill level of a beginning wood turner. If I got a deal for you, and that's this angel ornament. Uh, I did this video about 5 years ago, so this is a redo. It was one of the first videos on my channel. It got a lot of views. It gave me a lot of traction to get started, but it was a little bit long. The retention rates were a little bit low as people lost interest because I had maybe some unnecessary footage in there. And it drug a little bit. And I think I've gotten a little better over the last 5 years, so I think it's worth a redo. Hi, y'all. I'm Mike Peace. I'm passionate about wood turning, and I'm here to share with you tips, tricks, and techniques to help you become a better wood turner. So if that's what you're interested in, you know the drill. Click on the subscribe button so you won't miss any future notifications. So we're going to start with a 2x2 by 4 inch block. I wouldn't go any shorter than 4 inches, but you could go a little bit, you'd go down to probably 1.5 inches. So put it between centers, rough it out. I'm going a little fast here, 4 times normal speed. And then we're going to take it out and take out our centers and put a chuck. You know, we did add a chuck tenon, so we're going to mount this using that tenon. Make sure you got a nice clean shoulder. We bring up tailstock center before we actually tighten it up, and then we're going to true it up because I had a couple of flat spots here. We're going to mark the head about 7/8 of an inch down. Then I'm going to use a skew to make a V-cut here. There's other tools that can make V-cuts, but nothing does as good a job as the skew, so it's something you need to develop some skill with. We're going to do a peeling cut. I could use other tools, and you'll see I will demonstrate using other tools besides the skew on this exercise, but generally for the angel ornaments, I use primarily a skew. Here you can actually see me taking that peeling cut. And I'll be coming down making that V-cut just a little bit bigger here in a moment. So we're measuring the diameter, trying to get it down to about 7/8 of an inch. You could go down as small as 3/4 of an inch. I'm showing different tools. I can use a spindle roughing gouge to trim that head down a little bit. I could use a skew. I could use a spindle gouge. Notice how I arc into this cut. The handle is low, and then it lifts up as it arcs in toward the center on that V. Doing a little bit of rolling bead on the head using a skew. Coming in from the other side, got to be careful here because of the live center. I'll finish it a little bit later after I move the tailstock out of the way. Now here's an example of where I switched just to show you could use a spindle gouge. I'd use a 3/8 inch gouge. Problem with the spindle gouge is sometimes you have a hard time getting in that deep V without engaging that shoulder into the other side of the wood. That's why the skew does so very well on a V-cut. Here I'm using a detail gouge, which has a shallower flute. Again, it's 3/8 of an inch, but it allows you to get into a deeper V. Going back to the skew, starting on the other side of the wings. Here's a little better view. You can see you start in straight in, and then as you push down and arc into it, you tilt the tool slightly to one side. I'm measuring the length of the angel. You want that angel to be approximately 3 inches, so I go ahead and put a pencil mark here. And then I like to use a parting tool to actually mark the bottom. Makes it a little easier for me to control that shape if you got something to start from. So whatever parting tool you want to use, 1/4 inch is fine. I'm using an 1/8 inch here, and I'm not going very deep because I want to continue to hold the part on here. But just to mark it, I'm going to go back and work on that wing a little bit on top of the body. Here I'm going to demonstrate the problems you have with a spindle gouge. You can use it, but you can see as you get in the bottom, you've got to be very careful not to get the wing into the other shoulder. And of course, I can get rid of some of the scrap wood here on the left-hand side, and that will the bottom side of the edge will only give me a little room. Just take multiple cuts. And you're going to get that waist down to probably a little bit smaller than the size of the head. I've done so many of these things, I really don't do any measuring. I do it all by eye. Now we're going to use this skew to do a nice gentle taper, or actually a bit of a cove, because you want to have some curves in here, and I'll show in a moment if you can use another tool. Got to cut a little deeper on the waist. Try another tool again. Here we're using 1/2-inch spindle gouge. Spindle gouge works pretty well on this long taper and this gentle flowing curve from the bottom of the skirt up to the waist. You don't want it flat. You want that nice gentle curve to really see that curve picking up, to really give it a nice look. And I just kind of nip the edges there at the very bottom so it's not sharp. Now we're going to go ahead and relocate the tool rest, pull away the tailstock, just finish rounding off the top of the head. You don't have to get too particular about the very top, because we're going to wind up doing that on a sander. I put a little sanding butter on some abrasive paper and start shaping the head. I use a pretty coarse, probably 100 grit here on the head to get it quickly round. That's the only place you need to use a coarse grit. And then I go through all the different grits. I go up to maybe 240, possibly 320. Using that sanding butter on it, it keeps the dust down. And you want to go with the grain to get rid of any of those axial scratches you get. I like to use an abrasive paste, either Yorkshire grit or Axe abrasive paste or a homemade version. And that really gets rid of those really fine scratches. Rub it on consistently over the entire project so you get a nice even coat, and then you're going to do it at a slow speed. They generally recommend using a sanding sealer before you use abrasive paste, but for this particular project I don't normally do that. I just use the abrasive paste. Now I'm going to go to a friction polish. This is a shellac based polish, and again, I hand rotate it as I move and get a nice coating of that finish on there. And then at a fairly low speed, I start putting a little friction on it. After I ensure I got a nice smooth coat, sometimes I actually increase the speed. Now that I've finished, I usually use 2 coats of that friction-based polish. Now we're going to go ahead and part it off. I like to use a very thin parting tool here. But you can use whatever parting tool you've got. Slightly concave it in just a little bit so you'll have a flat bottom. It'll leave a tiny little bump at the bottom that you'll have to sand out later, but that's not a problem. You want to be careful with your hands touching this friction polish because you can get fingerprints. It needs about 24 hours to cure. Just how rough a surface that is. So we need to take that off. We can clean that surface up with a gouge. This works a little bit faster than using a skew. Skew leaves a wonderful finish, but if it's too rough, it takes multiple passes. So I like to use a really small bowl gouge for this. Then we're going to change the tool rest position, and we're going to come down. Oh, we want this to be maybe 1/8 of an inch thick. The diameter is a little too wide, so I want to bring it down to maybe 3/4 of what the base of the angel is. And I use a wide parting tool for this typically, but I could be using a skew on the side, kind of whichever tool is the handiest. Then we're going to use a small parting tool, and again mark the actual diameter of the halo. Depending on if it's punky wood, make it a little thicker. If it's strong wood, you can make it a little thinner, but somewhere around 1/8 of an inch or so. Just I'm using the edge of this parting tool, just kind of nip the corners a little bit to kind of help round it off. Don't go too far down because you do have to sand it. And go again, going through all the grits, abrasive paste, and then the friction polish finish. And then we'll do the final parting off. Again, using that thin parting tool. There's 3 sanding operations to the basic Angel. Number 1, the little nib when you part it off. You want to get rid of it. Then you want to look for a grain pattern if there is one to see which side would be the front, maybe a cathedral on the skirt like this one. And then orient it appropriately, and then take the front of the wings. Then you, keeping it 90 degrees to the floor, you tilt it back just a little bit and get a flat area on the head for the glue the halo. If you don't have a sander, you can make you a sanding disc. I've got a video. I'll have a link to a card with that video disc on it. I don't find it quite as convenient, but it can work. These Angels are about to get their halos. End grain to end grain is not the best glue joint, but if you put a little glue on the top of the heads and the halos, let them sit just a little bit and kind of fill in and get sucked in, and then come back with some fresh glue. Works out well. Titebond 2, I understand, is one of the few glues that provides a pretty good end grain glue joint. Do not use CA glue. It's too brittle and they'll pop off. I think mixing and matching the halos with contrasting wood or special colors is part of the fun. I try to get my granddaughters or shop fairies to assist in this step of the project. Because these ornaments are so fast and easy to turn, I like to batch them. First thing you got to do, you need to make a starter hole for the screw eye. If you don't, I've been told that you can snap these off. Never happened to me. There's a couple of ways you can drill them. One way is to use a little tiny pin vise. Now the drill bit I'm using is like 1.3 millimeter or about 50 thousandths of an inch. You can use a pin vise and drill that hole, but what I find easier is to just, once I get those starter holes, is just step over to the lathe and do this on the lathe, one right after another. So I bring a batch of these over to the lathe, turn it about 1,000. I like to turn it about 1,000 RPM. I like to try to get a little paraffin on that every now and then. And I just line it up with that hole, the awl hole, bring it up parallel to the floor, stick it in a little ways, pull it off, set it down, get a next one. Once you get them drilled, it's an easy thing to use these small screw eyes and just twist them in. I have a handout for this project, but these with the vendor sources. But these little 3 millimeter eyelet screw eyes I get from Peachtree Woodworking. I found there to be the best price and most convenient. And of course, it's local to me, but you can order them. It works great. The other thing I like to use is this little 1/16 of an inch trim cord. I use gold with the gold screw eyes. I use the silver with the silver screw eyes. And I've only found this available at Hobby Lobby. It's called 1/16 inch by 7 yards, 1.59 millimeter by 6.37 meter gold, 100% metallic. $1.99 for 7 yards. I try to get my granddaughters to help me out with this part of it, but they weren't available today. So you're going to cut off maybe about 5 inches and stick it to the eyelet, tie a little knot, and then trim it. Trim it just above the knot. Now what I like to do is I like to get these snack bags. They're very inexpensive, but don't get the cheapest ones because sometimes they don't seal quite as well and it becomes kind of frustrating. to save 50 cents and have a hard time. But I put in a business card, I put an angel saying, I drop those in the snack bag, drop in the angel, seal it, go on to the next one. I'm partnering with Alan Stratton of As Wood Turns this year for the 2019 Christmas Ornament Challenge. So I encourage y'all to check out the link to that and consider submitting a picture to get your entry in. If you want to watch more on Christmas ornaments, you know, I'll have a link to a playlist here with other Christmas ornaments. As always, I welcome your comments. I'm going to have a link to the handout for this video in the underneath the description for this video. Y'all stay safe. Come on back here.